their minds have been conquered for so long by Zionism and anxiety. But there is a much more beautiful and really rich and true Jewish tradition that could bring people out onto those protests. So I hope to see lots of Jews on these protests, as we've seen hundreds and hundreds of Jews in Jewish blocks and all over the demonstrations in recent weeks.
My knowledge of scripture isn't amazing, so I won't try and pick you up on any of those points. I'm going to have to take that as a given. I want to show one more response to the protest, which I found actually, I think this is what I found the most grotesque. And it's from the Jewish labor movement. So they have tweeted, so they're tweeting a tweet by Lee Harpin, who works for the Jewish Chronicle. And he is pointing out that Faiza Shaheen has posted a video on her Instagram of this protest. And the Jewish Labour movement say this: "We expect all Labour parliamentary candidates, not least those with sizable Jewish communities in the seat they're contesting, to take more care sharing material, which is more likely to inflame community tensions than calm them. Aspiring MPs should bring people together." Now, I've spoken to Faiza Shaheen. She said that actually, and she told Lee Harpin this, she wasn't on the demonstration. Obviously, I don't think there would be anything. I think it would be great if she was on the demonstration. She shared this video. And Lee Harpin from the Jewish Chronicle making a big deal of this, I think, that's to be expected. He is basically a troll. But the Jewish Labour movement sort of saying about a Muslim prospective parliamentary candidate, oh, why is this prospective parliamentary candidate at this demo? That could offend people from certain communities. Well, the Jewish Labour movement just yesterday actually backed Keir Starmer's opposition to a ceasefire. They're saying a ceasefire would be the wrong thing to do. And I'd have to say to the Jewish Labour movement, do you not recognise that there are some communities in the UK that think opposing a ceasefire is damaging to community tensions? I don't know if they've noticed, but it is the case. It's not just Muslims who are opposed to this dreadful war, but it is disproportionately Muslims who feel incredibly passionate about the fact that the carpet bombing of the Gazans is not a good thing. So when JLM sort of say, no, we're absolutely opposed to a ceasefire, I don't see that as a group of people who are prioritizing, peace between different communities. And so it seems to me that there is this demand that Muslims are very, very considerate of even the mere notion that they might offend a Jewish person's perspective when it comes to foreign policy. But when it comes to a Muslim who might be offended by a perspective on foreign policy, i.e. we should keep bombing Gazans, they don't seem to have to show the same sensitivity. Barnaby, what do you make of this? I find this very concerning, actually.
It is concerning how quickly we slip from discussion of Israel and Israeli crimes to discussion of Jews and Jewish feelings and thoughts and concerns in Britain. It is a conflation that is, of course, endemic to anti-Semites to collapse any distinction between the Israeli state and world Jewry, to read the Israeli state simply as the voice of every Jew all over the world. And it is a conflation that means that if I walk to synagogue wearing a kippah, a skull cap, I am more likely to be attacked. And so the left does extremely important work in clarifying that the state of Israel is just another settler colonial state. The state of Israel exists as a byproduct of Western imperialism. The state of Israel exists as a violent society predicated on the domination of natives and supported by Western power, which sees in it a regional ally, just as apartheid South Africa existed, and just as Algeria existed, and just as Vietnam existed, and just as so many settler colonial societies across the world have existed, propped up by imperial violence. In other words, the fact of the Jewishness of the state of Israel, though it is crucial to Israelis and to Zionists, is certainly not what matters to Palestinians who don't care what the religion of their colonizer and dispossessor is, but care that they've been colonized and dispossessed. So insisting constantly on the fact of Israel's Jewishness as the most important thing about it is both a mechanism for putting Jews in danger in Britain by associating Israel not with a problem of imperialism that we have to destroy, but with Jews. And it is also a mechanism for silencing, yet again, of course, here's the colonial hierarchy, the experiences of Palestinians for whom the Holocaust is a deep tragedy, but not one that they committed, for whom centuries of European Christian anti-Semitism are a deep tragedy, but not crimes that they committed, and who wish to live in peace and freedom in their own homes, but are told when they ask to live in peace and freedom in their own homes that they're not sufficiently considering the feelings of the people who've colonized them and stolen their homes. Just think for a minute what it would be like to experience that. If you're watching this right now, And we hear a lot about Muslim community feelings. It's not just about the Muslim community. If you're from anywhere in the world that was colonized, you know something about how that feels. To have your land taken from you, your history taken from you, your history just becomes another narrative that you like to tell, your food taken from you and claimed as the food of the colonizer, everything about your identity and experience taken from you, either denied and ignored or actively maligned and suspected. You're called a terrorist, you're called all kinds of judgmental things, and your experience isn't played back in the world. The experience of the colonizer is instead played again and again and again. That is an experience that is common to everyone from South Africans to Black people in America growing up reading literature until at least very recently, where all the good guys in kids' stories were white faces. The idea of the complete invisibilizing of your experience is something that will be familiar not just to Muslims, though it's certainly familiar to Muslims after 20 years after 9/11 in Britain, but to so many people from all over the world. But if you're white, I ask you to imagine it, because it's not something familiar to you, that your experiences are not taken seriously. So there's a lot of very concerning things going on here. And the left has a very important role to play constantly in opposing anti-Semitism, which always rises in times like this. And there is a rise in anti-Semitism now, a violent and a dangerous and a worrying rise from Dagestan to London. It is very important that we have the left to oppose that anti-Semitism, to oppose it regardless of what its victims think about the state of Israel, to have a principled opposition to anti-Semitism in all cases, and to stress that we want a world in which everybody lives in freedom, whether they're Jewish, Christian, or Muslim. And yes, we think that includes the taking apart of a state apparatus predicated on domination, the Zionist state in Palestine, so that everyone from the river to the sea can live in equality and freedom. That's our vision. And that's the vision that leads people in Liverpool Street Station to chant ceasefire now. And those who would talk about threats to Jews while having nothing to say or actively supporting violence against others, they're not consistent anti-racists.